Okay. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining today's information session, which is a joint event being hosted virtually by the IABC Toronto and IABC Calgary chapters. My name is Caroline Lule. I work as a communications strategist at Enbridge, and by night, I'm a member of the IABC Calgary board focused on professional standards, and I also happen to be a CMP. I'll be facilitating today's event, which is really intended to give you more information about how global certification can enhance your career, show your commitment to strategy, and highlight your ability to solve problems and drive business results through strategic communication. So if you're here to learn more about the career boosting benefits of certification, study tips, or just become inspired to take the leap, you're definitely in the right place. So first off, in today's session, we'll hear from Sharon Hunter. And Sharon is a strategic communications consultant, facilitator, and certified coach with over 30 years of experience in communications, including participating in the creation of the Global Communications Certification Council and the launch of its certification program. So we're very lucky to have her with us today. After her presentation, we'll open up the floor to questions for Sharon, and she'll be joined by Yasmin El-Shafei, partner and VP Strategy and Business Development at Multiplier Consultancy. She's a member of the IBC Toronto Board and an SCMP. And of course, I'll also be on hand to answer any questions related to preparing for the CMP exam. But before I hand the meeting over to Sharon and we could really get started, I'm going to share a few housekeeping items and a land acknowledgement. So first, I'll just ask that you remain on mute during the presentation. And then, of course, we want this to be as interactive and meaningful and engaging for you as possible. So please think of your questions throughout. And when we do get to the Q&As, you'll be able to either write your questions in the chat and have them read out loud, or you can raise your hand and I'll call on you to come off mute and ask your question. And finally, as I mentioned before, this session is being recorded, so please take note of that. And with that, I'll jump into our land acknowledgement. So I'd like to start by acknowledging that the land we gather on today has been inhabited by and cared for by people indigenous to this land since time immemorial. And we recognize and respect the historic connection to and stewardship by the Indigenous peoples over this shared land. And as such, know that we have a responsibility to preserve and care for the land, learned from the original inhabitants, and move forward together in the spirit of healing, reconciliation, and partnership. So with that, I'll now hand the meeting over to Sharon. Sharon, please feel free to jump in and share your screen.
Thanks so much, Caroline. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for making time to be here today. A shout out of congratulations to Caroline and to Yasmin, who are joining us as CMP and SCMPs today, as well as Paula Bernardino, my colleague from Montreal, who also serves on the GCCC with me. Thanks for being here tonight, Paula. She may actually know the answers to some questions I might not know how to answer, so I'm really glad that she's here. So I'm going to present for maybe 12 to 15 minutes. It's a basic overview of the program and the details involved, and then we'll really just jump into answering as many questions as we can for you. So I'm going to share my screen. When I do this, I lose my view of all of you. So I would ask that you let me know if anything comes up where there's an urgent question that I need to address, I will do so. Otherwise, please wait till the end and we'll get into it. Thanks a lot. Okay. Can everybody see this? Let me know, Caroline.
We can see it. You're good to go.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, first of all, you may or may not know what the GCCC is. It stands for the Global Communication Certification Council. Now, this is a council that was created by IBZ back in 2014 to develop a certification program that would be based on its standard for the Global Communication Certification Council to use to test against that standard. The council is an impartial body that operates at arm's length to maintain that impartiality in administering, improving, and managing the exam process. So why certify? I have a couple of testimonials from people here. Here's one from Canada, if anyone knows Glenn DePower. Getting certified demonstrates that you're competent across all 6 domains of the global standard and have met the GCC's rigorous testing requirements. For many, as Glenda says here, it's both a personal and a professional development achievement. The global standard you can read more about on GCC's website, but it has the different domains of ethics, strategy, analysis, context, engagement, and consistency. And we can answer questions on that later. Here's Alex Malouf out in Saudi Arabia, and he talks about the relevance of staying on top of trends in industry because the job market is always changing. And if you happen to manage a team of communication professionals, GCC certification can help provide a high level of confidence to senior leadership that your team is highly trained, meets the rigor of this global credential, and is prepared to support key business strategies and initiatives to achieve critical outcomes. Here's Wendy Thatcher, SCMP, another Canadian. I don't know if any of you know her. She refers to the value of having taken her credential as a career move and something that she calls her career self-care. I love how she describes this as being her commitment to career-long learning, and that helps her to feel that she's supported by a community because she's a sole communicator in her company. This year, the GCCC did a survey to ask about the value of communication, and I always stumble on this word, certificants told us they've received pay raises, been approached by recruiters, and have been promoted in their organizations and received increased job offers as a result of certification. So this comes down to why certify. In the survey, 69% said the reason for pursuing the certification was because they wanted to get more credibility in their work. They wanted to strengthen their credentials for new job prospects, and they wanted to essentially build their confidence in dealing with senior leadership to demonstrate their worth and show that they have all the competencies required to deliver on business results. Now, we have general research that also says that you're 3 times more likely to get shortlisted by a recruiter if you have a professional certification. More than 50% of certified professionals are promoted within the first 6 months of getting a certification, and they're almost twice as likely to receive regular pay raises, and 6 out of 10 received a pay raise within 6 months of getting certified. Those with a bachelor's degree or higher, combined with a certification, earn 18% more per week, and on average, certified professionals earn 29% more per week than their non-certified peers. But the majority in our survey said it gave them these sort of outcomes: improved personal branding, increased respect and recognition from peers. They did receive a pay raise and increased job offers. So all in all, a boost of confidence and recognition that helped them to gain more speaking opportunities, mentoring engagements, and more influence on the job. This is Michael Nord, our colleague in the Netherlands, and he shares a view here from a senior communication position, saying that it really helps to make you stand out from the crowd and your visibility within the organization, especially if you're dealing with the C-suite, and it has allowed him to get more contact and direct influence in working with C-level leaders in global organizations. And that's what he thinks it makes the difference for. No matter how long or how much experience you have in the industry, getting certified really signifies that you are really at the top of your game and meet the rigor of a global standard. So why certify your team? Again, if you are a manager or director in charge of a communications team, by offering certification for your whole team, helps boost employee engagement, retention, and employee brand. It also helps you to identify competency gaps across your team and close them. So it can help reduce risks and increase competitiveness. And these credentials build confidence to grow high-performing teams that do deliver key business results. So what is the certification? First of all, is the only one in the world. Our 2 programs we'll talk about in a moment, CMP and the SCMP, both are part of our program that is ISO certified. Now, you may be familiar with ISO. It's the International Organization for Standardization, which promotes worldwide standards. Why this is important is that it has certified that our process and the way of testing against our competency framework is one of the best ways that it can be done. No other organization in the world can make this claim about their certification program. But the tangible piece of why this is important is really from a DEI perspective. So, because ISO guarantees that there's an equitable and repeatable process every single time everywhere in the world, so that is an equal opportunity for anyone to take this exam. There is, because it's multiple choice, it's 100% fact-based, so there is absolutely no subjective evaluations that can skew any results. There's absolutely no human intervention on evaluating how the test was performed on, so it is completely equal for everyone to take this exam. So what are available? We have 2 levels. The CMP, which is Communication Management Professional. This is set up for people who are established in their career as a communication professional and are looking to demonstrate their competence. To be eligible to take this exam, you need 8 years of experience in the field, and you have to have accumulated 40 hours of training in the past 2 years to apply. Now, the 40 hours is equal to 40 points. We assign 1 point per 1 hour of training to be eligible to go through and take this exam. If you don't have 8 years, we will accept 6 years of experience, as long as you have 2 years of established education and also the 40 hours of training. So that would be, for example, a bachelor's degree or a type of diploma from a community college would be an example of the type of education you would need to be qualified to take the CMP at only 6 years in the field. Now for the SCMP, the Strategic Communication Management Professional designation, this is for highly skilled and practiced people who are working in an advisory role. So you have stepped up to be in an advisory role and you give advice and counseling to your organization's leadership. For this level, you need to have worked 11 years in the field minimum and have accumulated 20 hours of training in the past 2 years. Plus, we expect people at this level to be giving something back. And so we like to have a letter of recommendation from a mentee or an organization for which you've done some pro bono work, addressing the senior level contributions you have made to the communication profession. So this is the big question most people ask when they're considering applying is what counts as training? Well, pretty much anything that is relevant and related to working as a communication professional. So it could be skills-based events offered by businesses, nonprofits, industry associations, colleges, universities, trade schools, or vocational schools. It could even be in-house training you get in your corporate environment, as long as it is related to the job. It could be a 1-hour webinar that you take. It could be a 3-day course. It could be reading some particular journals, courses and workshops offered by a wide array of people. That does not have to be IBC training or masterclass offerings, although IBC does, by the way, offer a pretty nice group of masterclasses and other types of professional development that all count towards getting those training points, both for originally applying for the exam and later for your annual maintenance that's required. And I'll explain that in a minute. Okay. So the 2 exams have an equal amount of time and questions. Each one is 3 hours long, has 100 multiple choice questions. Now, the 3 hours is provided because really most people don't need them, from what I've heard, but it allows time to really reflect, and you're allowed to go back and review everything you've done before submitting your final answers. So I know one of the biggest barriers to people being ready to step up for an exam is just exam fear. It's stressful to take an exam no matter how experienced you are. So knowing you have ample time to go back and review your answers, I find brings a level of confidence and calm when you find yourself sitting in front of the computer. Now, normally in the past, it was only available in an in-person setting, whether through a chapter, providing an on-site exam, or through various conferences. But we launched remote proctoring last August, and since then it has become the predominant way to access the exam, because you can do it from the comfort of your home or your office, anywhere you can hook up on a computer, and that is anywhere in the world at any time. Okay, I skipped ahead of my comments before showing this slide, but it's have it your way. We make it possible. All right, so the two different levels have a different set of domains. So for the SCMP, excuse me, the CMP, it has 5 domains and the SCMP has 6. Each has a comprehensive job task analysis that outlines the range of knowledge you're expected to have to operate at that level. All of this information can be seen on the GCC website. In a moment, I'll show you where to find that online, where you can review everything that's involved in these different domains of what you're supposed to know and what could end up being on your exam. An example for the at CMP at strategy and engagement domain includes something like establishing measurable objectives to provide direction and meaningful communication outcomes and outputs, presenting the business need or opportunity or strategic communication approach, and collaborating with internal and external partners. Another example for SCMP in the advising and leading domain, which is 23% of the exam. This includes tasks like counseling executives and business unit leaders about communication and its effect on business results, coaching executives, unit leaders, and others with the organization how to communicate effectively in a variety of situations, and advising executives and leaders on the communication aspects of business plans and their effects on stakeholders. So there's a whole list of knowledge that you should know to effectively carry out these tasks. And it's really important that you actually go online and have a look at what's included. There's even a practice exam in the study resources section, so you can get a feel for how the questions are asked. They're mostly scenario based. They'll ask you, here's a situation, how would you take action? And you have your ABC through D to choose your answer. So they can really help you build some confidence prior to taking the exam. But I will like to underscore the fact that, in fact, you shouldn't really need to study. Everybody says that. These exams are meant to test what you should already know if you're actually working in these roles for the number of years that is required to be ready to sit these exams. So it's nice to feel more confident by reviewing different things. But in fact, if you've been working in the field, you should probably do pretty well on these exams without doing very much prep. Oh, next. I wanted to say one more thing about the study resources before getting into the costs. I'm going to show you those pages when we're finished with this presentation here, because I'd love to hear the feedback from others in the room here today who've done it. But what we hear most that people find most helpful and effective for preparing for the exam is the IABC Practical Guide to Communication, and going and reviewing the IBC Circle of Fellows podcasts. Those are the top 2 that people say they find very, very helpful in just reviewing trends in industry, what's top of mind, what's really the state of the workplace today. So here are the costs. Pricing has 2 tiers. Group 1 is most countries, where if you are a member of any global alliance association, which includes IBC, it's $395 US, which includes a non-refundable application fee. That's to register and sit and take the exam. And the annual renewal, which I'll talk about in a moment, is $95 US a year. It's a little more expensive for non-members. And then group 2 are countries where the World Bank has classified the national economies per capita in a different way. And so we have lower pricing for those countries, $250 US for the exam and $50 for renewal. If you are an ABC and you'd like to step up to refresh your knowledge, we offer a special price for ABCs, which was IBC's flagship program for many, many, many years. And that's only $195 for any ABC that wishes to take the exam. Excuse me. So the annual maintenance, which is the renewal, you need to continue to accumulate 40 professional development points per year. So as I said before, 40 points means 40 hours. And that could be across all kinds of different activities. When you log in on IBC's platform, where the GCCC tracking is contained, you can keep track of everything you do. You go to a chapter event, it's a 2-hour learning workshop. you're getting your 2 points there. You attend an IBC webinar or any other industry webinar that is related to communication management, you'll get points for that. It's 1 point for 1 hour. And then you just complete your renewal application and pay the annual fee, and you've renewed for 1 year's time. And there's a big range of, let me just go back for a second here. There's a range of different activities that count as well, rather than simply formal, what you might call formal training. If you attend or speak at a communication skills-based event, so for example, if you lead a chapter event for skills and learning, you can count that time as well as being part of your renewal. You can log different types of journals or information, Catalyst articles, other communication journals as part of that. Having leadership roles in the profession, if you volunteer at one of your chapters, the time that you spend contributing to professional development in your chapter setting can also count. You get involved in mentoring or any communication award program where a substantiated entry needs to be made and more. So there's a variety of activities to accumulate those 40 points per year. So what happens if you fail? Well, it doesn't happen that much, but if you need to, you can retake the exam for a $100 US fee. If you fail a second time, you need to wait 6 months to try again. So candidates who fail a second attempt must wait that 6 months, and before a third attempt or final attempt. 3 times you're out, but I think that there are some policies which I don't have at the top of my head of how long you may have to wait to retry. But just to give you an idea, the pass rates for these 2 exams as of October of this year, the CMP was 69% and the SCMP 98%. Now people debate, well, how could that be so? But generally people who are taking the SCMP exam are many more years in the field, and so they often tend to really know their stuff. This is sticking. Okay, that's it. I can go back and review anything, but I'm going to stop sharing for the moment on this one.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sharon. That was a really interesting presentation. In fact, one of the quotes that from the feedback you received from communicators who had taken the exam that really stuck with me was that communications is a learning journey, which I agree with completely. I think on the job, you're learning every single day, and outside of the job, it's also incumbent upon us to continue learning. So that's really important. And I know you had the study resources that you're going to share the links to in the chat so that everyone knows where to find them, which would be great.
Let me just get back to my access here. This is for the CMP. This is where you can go and read everything about the domains, the tasks involved, and even the suggested types of content that can help you prepare. Okay, I think now I can stop sharing.
No, that's perfect. And you also shared some new information because I didn't know about the 3 strikes and you're out rule for
Well,
the
maybe
test.
I shouldn't have put it that way. I'm sorry, but
No,
basically, within a certain period of time, if you fail 3 times, you need to go back and take some time to. IBC has a career assessment tool available that you can go and identify more of the gaps that you may have in different domains. Because look, we're a multidisciplinary field. You could be in marketing communication, or you could be specialized in crisis. You could be specialized in all different fields where maybe you think, oh, I'm not really a generalist specialist. So I haven't actually done every single type of activity that could come under the umbrella of corporate comms. I was like that myself. I started my career in marketing, and I was always worried that, well, I've never really done media relations. It's never really been part of my focus. I've been in internal comms and in external marketing. So, I went and reviewed some media relations type material at the time. I did my SCMP back in 2017. So all we had at that time was IBC's old Bible of organizational communication, if anyone's in here
I think
knows
I had
that.
that.
And so I just brushed up my knowledge on media relations principles to make sure that if a question came up on that, that I'd feel prepared. But the bottom line is, even if you got one question on an exam of 100 questions and you got it wrong, you're not going to fail because of that one question. So I think that's one of the things about just making people feel confident to step up is, for the most part, you should already know what you'll be asked on this exam, but
And I'm
just brush
glad you
up your
said that.
knowledge so you feel confident going in, because being nervous and stressful is not fun.
Perfect. And I'm glad you said that. I got in trouble once for saying that I don't think you can really study for this exam. And someone's like, you absolutely can. I said, I think you have to know yourself. So I think that career assessment tool is fantastic to identify your gaps where you think that you haven't had as much experience. I think that's great advice. And now I'll open up the floor for questions from anyone on the call. But while you're thinking of those questions, you can either drop them in the chat or raise your hand. I do have a couple of questions, one to bring Yasmin into the fold. I wanted to just get your thoughts as a CMP and someone who is looking to pursue their SCMP this year. Why did you decide to pursue that certification, and what would you say was your top tip for approaching that exam?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm so glad I'm actually participating in this session. I just finished my SCMP a few months ago, and it was really a great accomplishment. I thought about it when I first moved to Canada. I moved to Canada 4 years and a half. So as a newcomer, I've been working in the field for more than 10 years, and I wanted actually to validate that from where I come from, it's the same knowledge and the same market practice. So that was the trigger actually to be motivated and start exploring the SCMP option. And I say that after studying for the SCMP, it did three things to me. First, it created this validation because it's actually a knowledge everywhere. It's the same knowledge. It's just the market specializations in some areas, but it's the same practices, the same technicalities. So it validated actually what I know. That was a very good strength point. Another thing that I loved about the book, and Sharon mentioned some of the IBC resources. It includes the IBC guide for practical business communicators. And it's actually a very interesting book because it's not theoretical at all. It's all about practical examples, about case studies that happened in real life. So it's actually a very interesting read to anyone who's working in the communication, even if you're not taking the exam. So that was another thing, to be exposed to the best in class practices, as they call it, in different spectrums of the job and of the communication field. And third, to have more of a business mindset, because the whole SCMP especially, it really combines the role of the communicators and the awareness regarding the different business operations. And that's actually pushed me after I finished that. That's one of the things that actually encouraged me to embark in my own venture and have my own entrepreneurship experience after I finished it. I got encouraged to do this because it helps you and widen the knowledge and gives you the confidence that yes, you are not just a communicator, but you are really holding like a puzzle of the different business aspects and operations within the communication umbrella.
Thank you. That was a fantastic answer. And from a CMP perspective, I think we had a lot of the same rationale going into pursuing this. And I pursued my CMP a few years ago, which is why SCMP is on the agenda for this year. But it was really a commitment to continuing to learn and grow. It was to also help me identify areas where I may want to stretch and take on new opportunities and assess my skills, and really being able to assess them against a common standard. It does give you an additional confidence when you walk into the room and you're providing advice to senior leaders that it's based on a global standard and not just how you're feeling that day. So that's a great reason to do that. And a follow-up question to that is, and maybe this question for both you, Yasmin, and you, Sharon, is after taking the test and receiving your SCMP designation, how did you leverage that in terms from a brand perspective to elevate your brand, as one person put it? And what type of benefit did you see in your career?
Would you like to go first, Yasmin?
Go ahead, Sharon, if you want.
Well, basically, I've been an independent consultant and practitioner for over 25 years. I had an earlier career in-house. So when I was independent and looking for clients and doing different sorts of pitches, I found at one point that having the SCMP gave me that extra piece of credibility to say, I actually know my stuff. So I have a history of working on many client projects as an independent, but I actually do have this certification that shows I'm staying on top of industry trends. I'm committed to lifelong learning. And so it helped me get more business. I feel that in terms of credibility, it really gave me that extra piece having been independent. So that was the biggest outcome for me and why I did it, even though I'd been, 20 years in the field already.
For me, there are two things that I can relate to answering Caroline's question. First, in relation to creating a personal brand, as we call it, I started to feel that people reached out to me often on LinkedIn, maybe asking about my opinion in certain topics and asking me to join some SCMP study groups and talk about my experience, or just getting into an interview and being asked more about certification and the process and so on. So that's really helped me, and I loved sharing those experiences with people, and I loved when they really took the exam after this and they just passed. So it was really amazing. And another point, and it's a funny situation that happened to me right after finishing my SCMP, and it was a client that I was working with on developing an issue management manual. And at the beginning and before taking my SCMP, usually I did it in a certain way. And then after taking the SCMP, I got to understand that it's not a communication practice only, but in order to do a proper issue management, you have to meet with different business operations and specialists in different departments. So this client came with the mentality of that I can do the job without meeting the different leadership teams within their business. And when I told her that, no, I know that from the SCMP and now that I'm being certified, that this is a global knowledge and that the practice says that I should meet the different leaders of different operations and departments. And I did it my way. And the manual actually went out and we even presented it to the CEO of this company, and it was an amazing experience and they all loved it. And it was actually a turning point, not only for my knowledge, but even for my clients and for their actually business operations, kind of.
I love that example of being able to lean on best practice and point to that source of truth. And I think it does a lot to build our credibility as communicators. So I love that example. And some other tips just from leveraging perspective, some things I've done, which I found pretty beneficial internally, is adding CMP to my signature at work. So it's there in front of, or I think in front of my MBA. So if someone asks, what is that? It gives me an opportunity to talk about the certification and what it means, which is great promotion for, I think, communications as a whole and for myself. I, of course, have it on LinkedIn. I think that's great. And then, of course, I say this is for everyone who is invested in training. If you have individual development plans and you're sitting with your people leader, if you mention that you are required to maintain this certification by investing 40 hours into training, it's also great rationale for some of your PD dollars to be allocated there. There's a great connection, and then you bring that knowledge back into the team, and it's a very nice virtuous circle that takes place there. And then sometimes you can also get them to pay even for your to be able to renew your certification. So there's some great benefits there. So when you do, because I assume everyone's going to take the exam, make sure that you do share it and leverage it, and don't let it kind of accumulate dust for the majority of the year and dust it off just at renewal time. There's ways to leverage it throughout the year as well to keep yourself accountable. And I think we have a couple of questions, so I'll move to the chat now. Diane, you had a question. Did you want to come off of mute, or would you like me to just read that out for you?
I didn't realize I had been directly messaging to Sharon, sorry. The employers are still asking for ABC credentials often. I see it all the time. I'm looking for work currently. So if you do get either of these two and you respond to something to that effect, could you say, well, it's the equivalency, this is the new one, or are they equivalent?
Yeah, so I responded to you in the chat. Also, Diane, not realizing it was just to you and not everyone. It's not an equivalent. Getting your ABC is amazing. It's kind of like getting a master's degree. You know, you get it once and it's a credential you'll have forever, and that there's a certain amount of pride associated with that. This is a completely different program, though. The whole axis of it is to show that you are staying current with your training on an ongoing basis. That's why there's an annual requirement to show that you're taking different training and updating your skills every single year. And so it's not really equivalent. That's why, though, we give ABCs a very preferential rate to just go sit the SCMP exam. I think if you've been continuing to work all of these years since getting an ABC, you'll have no problem doing well on the SCMP as long as you do that quick review. Just, you know, look at what trends are in industry going on today, and make sure you feel competent that, you know, you can answer scenario-based questions on a range of topics. And then you'll have the new credential. Although it's wonderful to have employers that are actually asking for credentials in general. I think that's one of the things we talk about a lot is what's the value of a communication credential? Do people really understand what that means? And for me, the first thing I always say is by stepping up and getting this, especially if you're quite senior and think you don't need it at this late stage of your career, it's about advocacy for the profession. It's about, we are a profession, we have a competency model, we have a global standard, and this test shows that we've met this rigorous standard as professionals, and we deliver results based on that. So I always do the rah-rah for no other reason. Let's demonstrate our worth by advocating for our profession.
100%. And Michael has a question around studying, and I think all three of us can answer this one. So Michael's been approved to sit for the CMP exam, currently studying. Did anything about the exam catch us off guard? Now, I will say, just from my perspective, I was somewhat nervous about it. So I was over preparing. So I looked at all of the resources. I went through all of the practice questions that Sharon mentioned and made sure that I could answer them. I bought the book, the textbook online, and I went through the chapters that I wasn't as familiar with. I wasn't doing much in the research space. So I was like, I need to refresh that. So I'll say when I got to the test, I felt fairly prepared. I will say some of the scenario-based questions, you're going to want to take your time and read through them so that you have an accurate idea of what they're asking you, because the answers can be similar. And I told someone else this, a lot of times you know what the right answer is from a communications perspective, and yet you see an answer that your business is actually doing, like the wrong answer. So you have to course correct that knee-jerk reaction of saying, that's what we're doing and what we shouldn't be doing. This is the actual right answer. So be careful of that.
Thank you for sharing that, Caroline. That's absolutely true. You know, some people don't like the idea of a multiple choice because it's cut and dry. It's like, here's your 4 choices and that's it. But I just wanted to reiterate, that's why you have 3 hours, and the system's set up in a way that you can answer your questions. You can even skip questions and come back to them. So before you hit that final submit button, you know, most people can get through 100 questions in less than 2 hours. You can literally take a whole hour although I hope you wouldn't second guess yourself out of the right answer, but you can go back and review every single question and make sure you're happy with your answer before you hit submit. So I think that helps a lot.
Yasmin, anything surprise you about the
Yeah,
SCMP exam?
I was going to tell you, thank you for mentioning this part, because I felt the same during the exam, that there is this, shift between what you do in life and what's right to answer. So I thought I'm alone. Now I know that it's not only me. Another point that I want to mention is related to, I don't know if you hear some echo in the voice.
Yeah, I was hearing a bit of an echo. Maybe if everyone goes on mute,
Yeah.
except for Yasmin, and we'll see if that might solve the issue. Might be some feedback. Okay, maybe try that again.
Yeah, another aspect that was very interesting to know, that there are some study groups. So if you're planning to take the exam, I didn't know this, or I didn't actually fetch for one before taking my exam. But after taking the exams, I knew that some of my friends in IBC, they did a study group, and it was really beneficial. Because they used to read things together, and they used to come back with questions after reading chapters from the book, and reconfirm what did they understand about this and that, and have open discussions and share resources together. So I think this is a brilliant idea. If anyone is taking the exam, they might consider to form like small study groups together, whether from IBC networks or others.
Thank you. That's great. And Michael has a couple of questions.
Thanks, Caroline. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay, cool. So I wasn't nervous, but now I'm a little bit nervous about the exam. I'm actually looking on the ProLydian website right now. I just had a couple of questions actually about the application. I know it says so I'm considering doing the CMP. I've basically been working the last 5 years sort of consistently in a communications management role. But before that, I kind of worked in some kind of related fields, like I worked as a writer and an editor and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering if that type of experience can count towards the application. Because I'm kind of like right on the cusp of the 6 years. Like if I just count, strictly speaking, my communications management experience, but it's I'm also unemployed right now, so it's a little bit hard for me to get that extra year unless I can use sort of related fields.
That is a very specific question, Michael, and I don't want to
Okay.
speak out of turn, but generally, if what you did before is truly related, we know there's like overlap between marketing comms, and comms. If you were in a transactional role before, where you're in a related field or part of a communication team, marketing communication department, it might be considered depending on what your role was. But I can't say how the admin group would really review that eligibility criteria if you've really only worked 5 years in the field. I think it's still worth applying. And if you're not eligible, they'll tell you.
Okay.
Yeah.
My second question just actually had to do with the payment. So I was looking on here because does the $395, does that include the application fee? Or is that just for the exam fee?
It does. It's $95 non-refundable.
Okay.
If you apply and I guess you're not eligible, then you're still gonna have the $95. That's an admin fee for assessing your profile. So the $395 includes the $95 of admin fee to process your application.
Okay. If I have an IABC Plus membership, I think that includes, I think it says the fee for the application gets waived. Is that correct?
To be honest, I don't know. I'm not familiar with all the different levels of IABC membership. I have a standard one myself. But usually your membership will tell you very specifically everything that's included. I don't know if Paula knows the answer to that. No, she's shaking her head too.
Yeah, me too. I have a standard membership, so I don't know, but it's worth looking into.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
who can I contact?
Yeah, well, any questions that you have, you can write into info@gccouncil.org to ask questions about the application process and ask as many detailed questions as you need to make sure that, like you said, if you've only got 5 years, you may not be eligible and you don't want to lose your application fee. But
Right.
certainly write in those questions to the council administration, and they will guide you on the best way to approach that application process.
Okay.
And I will say it's just to build on what you were sharing, Sharon, with subjective cases like that, I found that the GCCC is very responsive. When I was going through the application process, I had some training. I wasn't sure if it fit the criteria, and I was able to go and they're able to look at it. And we had a discussion about it. And ultimately, they decided it did fit the criteria and go forward. But they do work with you on an individual basis. So if anyone has any questions or concerns about their application, please go ahead and do that, because I'll tell you, the application process was almost as daunting as studying for the exam. I think I had to call a couple of references from who I hadn't talked to in a few years. Just, I'm not sure if the application is exactly the same now, but it was fairly involved. I said, this is the test before the test to make sure that you're qualified to write it. So are there any other questions, anything that is keeping folks up at night in related to the certification process, or any questions that we haven't covered yet? Oh, one just came in. So this is from Kristen. Are there resources, business cases for chapters to support increasing the profile of these certifications at the local level with HR corporations? How do we pitch business?
I'm just rereading the question to make sure I understand it. GCCC does have a business case letter for individuals to use to bring to their employer to say, I would like to pursue this professional development opportunity. Will you support me? Here's the business case of why it's important. So that same information in general is about the value of why you should be doing this, that chapters could use when they're talking about it. I think one of the best ways, though, for chapters to promote certification is to hold info sessions, to create study groups so that people can just talk to each other, provide advice, so that the number one barrier to actually stepping up and taking an exam is confidence. For the most part, people do know their stuff, and it's just that fear of, stepping into an exam. And so that kind of support makes a difference. But in terms of specifically promoting it the local level to HR and corporations, I don't know what function in the chapter would do that. But certainly it's the same value proposition that we all use. It's about that global standard, the ISO accredited program, and that it's extremely rigorous. And so one of the things that we do when we talk to people is talk about, well, what does HR do to recruit? What kind of framework do they use or criteria to create their job descriptions for communication roles? How do they decide with their communication leader who's hiring what they're looking for those roles? And this is where even the job task analysis and competency framework can be very useful, because it is a global standard and it's an accredited program by ISO. And now it's been many years in the making, and there's lots of testimonials from individuals on how it has advanced their careers. So I think there's general information that could be used. I don't know what chapters really get involved in doing that, but I think that they can be supported with that if they're interested.
And I'm, as you were saying that, something came to mind, because I remember having a discussion about how do we talk to hiring managers about the CMP and SCMP now that the ABC has been not necessarily phased out, but is no longer the prominent certification. And I think we have an opportunity now as communications leaders to start to influence our hiring communications hiring managers. And if we have that certification, start saying, I think it would be a good idea to hire someone who has this certification, who we know is committed to continuous learning and growth, has an understanding of best practices, has been evaluated based on a global standard, and has gone through a rigorous application process, as all of you know. We have that ability now. So from a chapter perspective, I'm saying this as I'm Director of Professional Standards for the Calgary chapter, it may be talking to members inside the chapter about how they can influence, what are the key messages that they can share with hiring managers within their organizations, because they'll be involved at some level in staffing open communications roles. But so that's where my thinking was going, thinking out loud there.
If I could add one thing there before we move on, that's a very important point, because I kind of just passed over it in why should you get your communication team certified for everyone that's eligible. It really is about establishing the value of your team and demonstrating their worth within your own organization. I've been reading stuff this week about comms teams getting slashed with budget cuts, you know, being some of the first departments to get hit or when cost reduction initiatives come around. And so it might just add that extra little bit of demonstrated value when you say, I have a world-class certified communication team. They have all passed these very rigorous exams that are ISO accredited. They deliver business results, and it might just give a pause for thought of how the department is seen within the organization and the value that it delivers. That's one of the things that I would say is the value of getting your whole team certified when you can.
Perfect. And we have a couple of questions from Diane. So one is, does volunteer management count? And I assume this is towards the application, Diane. And also for the pro bono work, is there a minimum requirement, and can you give examples?
If you went and did a communication project in a charity function, you know, if you participated in something like IABC's Gift of Communication event, or just on your own, you went and did some very important comms work for a charity at no charge, all you would need is a letter of recommendation from that charity proving that you came in, described the project, and the fact that it was done on a pro bono basis, and that they are obviously thrilled with the results that they achieved based on your generous help. So letters of recommendation. Volunteer management, yes, for it doesn't necessarily have to be at your chapter, but I would certainly encourage everyone here, if you aren't already volunteering and doing something for your chapter, you should. So I always say volunteering does volumes for visibility. It's a great way to step into leadership positions, practice your skills, sometimes get a chance to work on projects for the chapter that you don't normally do in your current role at work. And that time spent in a volunteer leadership role that advances communication, you know, such as if you're in the PD board of your chapter, or even if you're in another association and doing volunteer work in a leadership role to advance communicators, you would get a letter of recommendation from your chapter attesting to your participation in volunteer leadership role. And yes, it counts. When you go and see how you can categorize your renewal points, because that's one of the things that comes up every year. Oh, I got to get 40 hours again now this year to be renewing my hard-won certification. These same things all count, but there's a maximum number of points you can allot to the different categories. So when it comes to volunteer leadership or leadership service, there will be a maximum number of points in that category that you can assign to it. So you have to show that you have a variety of continuous learning that's taken place in the year. So there's a limit to how many points you can put on one particular event. Like, for example, if you go to IABC World Conference, I believe it's a maximum 24 points in any given category. And so, you know, even if you end up spending, I don't know, all 5 days, and it's however many hours of workshops and things that you went to, you can only give a maximum of 24 points for that. So I don't know if that answers the question. Did I answer the question?
Oh, it looks like you did. So thank you very much. And we have 3 minutes left. So maybe just a quick lightning round, I think, for we can go with Yasmin, then Sharon before I close off. And if there was one message you'd like to leave our communications leaders with this evening, what would that be?
Well, I think it would be as 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 an outcome of the whole session. Really, anyone working in the communication field can do the exam and can take it, and it's not. Yeah, it is an exam at the end, and I know we're all anxious about it, but it's a very logical exam if you have the experience that it takes. It's uh, just as easy as you can imagine. And I would love to ask everyone, if anyone is taking the SCMP and want to reach out. I know sometimes questions pop up after the session, so definitely reach out to LinkedIn and ask any question, or we can even connect on one-on-one basis.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Thanks, Yasmin. I will echo all of that, what you said, and just say, go with confidence. You've got this. If you're actually working in the field for the number of years required, you're pretty well set up. And just talk to people who've done it. Go have a look at the study resources, look at the practice exam to get a feel for how the questions are asked, so it's not a big surprise. And you should be okay. You shouldn't need to take a lot of time and prep for this. It's more about your own confidence of being ready to sit down and do a 3-hour exam. And you got this. You can do it. Yes.
Absolutely.
Any more questions you want to send after this? If there's very detailed ones about the application process, I will refer those to our certification manager, Yanika Karas at Smith Buckland, who manages the program, and we will answer and send back a document that maybe you could share with everyone to make sure that all those questions get answered.
Absolutely. And then final thoughts are really around taking ownership of your career. This is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your commitment to continuous growth and improvement, and there is no downside. And you have a number of attempts that you can make. And I can tell you the upside, the ability to promote yourself internally and externally, it does differentiate you. It is noticed, I found internally, especially if you're the only one in your department or one of two in your department that has this, it sets you apart. You are a leader in that way. So please consider it as a way to elevate your brand, elevate your value, and take the leap. So with that, we'll end the session. And I really want to thank all of you for your time. It's been such a great discussion. A big thank you to Sharon and Yasmin for your presentation and your insights. And thank you all for your active listening and participation. And we'll be sending around a survey link after this session, either today or tomorrow, because we'd love to get your thoughts and feedback on how we can make these sessions better for all of you. So thanks again, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all.